Hello everyone, Adab, Namaste, Salam, and welcome to today's event. Today we are going to have Professor Amitava Kumar, a very well-respected, very well-known scholar. He teaches English at Vassar College, Poughkeepsie, New York. He is a novelist, essayist, a scriptwriter, written wonderful novels, especially one or couple of novels became very, very famous and covered by New Yorkers and all other famous journals, Immigrant Montana. I think he is going to be formally introduced by Dr. Vasudhara Rao, so I'm not going to say much about him. Dr. Vasudhara Rao is a lecturer. She teaches English at Karim College in Jharkhand. She's a poet herself. She has written 4 books of poems, and mostly her focus is on gender, environment, and all that. Concluding remarks will be given by Professor Aisha Munira Rashid, who is a professor at Aligarh Muslim University. She herself has written a lot on many topics. Her research includes post-colonial studies, comparative literature and culture, Islamic literature and culture, and translation of many things. So welcome you all. And now I invite Dr. Vasudhara for formal introductory remarks. Vasudhara. Yes, please.
Greetings, everyone. And it's such a joy to be here. Very grateful to have this wonderful program being conducted by this forum, which has grown dear to so many in these last couple of years. So we look forward to a wonderful evening today with Professor Amitava Kumar. We are in touch with a great, astonishing mystery when we put honest words down on paper to register a life and to offer witness. Everything else is ordinary, writes Professor Amitava Kumar, writer, journalist, poet. He was born in Ara, Bihar, and grew up in the nearby town of Patna. He earned his bachelor's degree in political science from Hindu College, Delhi University, and went on to obtain a master's degree in linguistics from Delhi University and in literature from Syracuse University. He moved on to also get his PhD from the University of Minnesota. At present, he is the Helen D. Lockwood Professor of English at Vassar College. Author of 4 novels and several works of nonfiction, his books have won major acclaim in almost all the best-selling lists. His work has appeared in the Granta, the New York Times, Harper's, Brick, The Nation, and several other publications. He has been awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship, a United States Artist Fellowship, and residencies from London Foundation, MacDowell, Yaddo, and Bellagio. He was also a Cullman Center Fellow at the New York Public Library for the year 2023 to 24. This evening, we look forward to this wonderful session titled Many Words for Heat, Many Words for Hate. At a time when hate seems to be flowing across the globe, it's important to question, rationally question, I believe, which Kumar has done in many of his books and his recent articles, questioning where the center of this hate lies and how in many ways can we set up a structure to defeat this. He talks about strategies of survival against hate. His most recent article, where he describes his journey across the length and breadth of India on the Himsagar Express, talks about intimacy with a nation and its citizens, and also, tracing these intimate connections of historical identity. We look forward to a very, very interesting evening. Sorry, it's morning for so many of us. We look forward to a very, very interesting session today. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you so much. Over to you.
I thought that over to, Professor. Sir.
Thank you for the introduction, Professor Roy, and thank you, of course, for the invitation. Raji Saab, when he asked me if I would come on this and talk, I was a little busy, but मैं राजी हो गया क्योंकि उनके नाम में ही राजी. How could I say no to him? You know what I'm saying? So, and in that, I'm explaining all this because as I was saying, I was a little busy. So, मैंने एक title दे दी. I gave this title because I had written a piece and have been struggling for a long time to think about how to just produce a writer's report on what is happening in India. And the two phrases that you see balanced in the title, many words for heat, many words for hate, is supposed on one hand to represent the politics of the environment, many words for heat, and then the environment of politics, many words for hate. So, how to approach one, but not just by itself, and how to approach the other, but again, not just by itself. One other thing I want to say is that the title actually came from a piece I wrote for Granta as the starting point of this project. And so I'm going to read out that paragraph to you. Since I don't actually have a talk or anything, I'll just read out different things that I have stitched together as a little conversation about how I'm going about doing the work that Professor Roy was saying I have embarked on. Acha. In Delhi, the heat was chemical, something unworldly. A dry bandage had wrapped around the body. I sent a note to my friend Ravish, who at that time still an anchor on, who was still at that time an anchor on NDTV's Hindi show, Prime Time. I asked Ravish that if the Inuit, the Eskimos, if the Inuit supposedly have more than 50 words for snow, a specific word, for example, for snow used to make water, why don't we Indians have more words for heat? Ravish asked members of his audience to respond to this question. Words and phrases that Ravish and I didn't know in a mix of Indian languages came in from different cities and parts of the country, adding nuance and variety to what the newspapers were only calling a heat wave. For those of you who are not familiar with Ravish, Ravish's signature opening is Namaskar, मैं Ravish Kumar. And he said, मेरे दोस्त अमिताभ कुमार, लेखक अमिताभ कुमार आए हुए हैं और उन्होंने कहा है फलाना फलाना. So then people started sending these words, and it was amazing. Words from in Rajasthani, for example, about heat that inspires a vision of clouds, or heat that inspires the desire to visit the sea, etc. It was great. Ravish, so I'm going on to finish this paragraph. Ravish concluded his monologue by saying that if you forget the many words for heat in your own language, you will also forget the names of your neighbors or the fact that people of two different religions used to live peaceably together. You will also forget why you are beginning to forget. So that was the way in which I arrived at this title for not just what I wanted to talk with you, but actually to organize in many ways my journey. So this is a writer's report. So let me begin by saying that the train journey that Professor Roy had just mentioned, what happened was a few years ago, this documentary from 1967, produced by the National Film Development Corporation, came up on YouTube. And then I watched it. A friend of mine who's also a journalist wrote a piece about it. He was trying to find out who were these people in the documentary. It was just 19 minutes long. It was called I Am 20. It was made by South Indian filmmaker S.N.S. Sastry, and who was a radical, he was a maverick. In the film, what we see is first we are on a train and the camera is catching glimpses of the country, and then we have voices speaking. And the first voice that appears in the film says that he would like to travel across India with a tape recorder and a camera and find out what is our essence, what is happening in the country, etc. So remember, this is 20 years after independence. The film director is interested in asking the question, what has independence meant to us? What is life like now? What do you want? How do you imagine your future? From we don't hear any questions. We actually hear the answers and we have to devise or divine what the questions have been. तो हमने भी सोचा कि भाई, more years have passed. Why not I, as an opening move in my own project, do a similar journey? And I thought कि बचपन से you had always heard this slogan कि भाई कश्मीर से कन्याकुमारी. So I thought, because there is this train that goes from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, it would be a nice little device, almost like a spine for a narrative. You know, in my writing classes, I teach my students how the narrative should have a spine, एक तरह की backbone या रीढ़ की हड्डी. So I thought, just as an opening narrative, I'll ask, what has happened in the last 10 years? What has happened in the last 20 years? What is the reality of the country? हमारे देश में हो क्या रहा है? Which way are we going? And for those who might have had a chance to read the piece, I say towards the end, even as I'm asking questions of people, I say towards the end that I myself was not happy with the way I had been interacting on the train, because I felt quite oppressed actually. लोगों की behavior से, लोगों की बातों से, what the people were saying, what they were doing. So I retreated into my own space. I took notes. I wrote a little bit. I was reading a book by Sudha Bharadwaj called From Phansi Yard. As many of you might know, she is a labor organizer, also the daughter of a famous and profoundly influential radical economist. But she has been jailed under trumped-up charges. In the Bhima Koregaon case, and then let out not too long ago, but still the case hangs over her head. Anyway, I was reading her book about her time in jail, and that was interesting to me. In my report, I ask people, I wanted to ask, where is India? What is it going? But I report that I meet migrant laborers from Bihar, from Professor Roy's Jharkhand, who are going down south to work in Vijayawada, other places. And I wanted to be honest in saying that I felt that I could not ask them such questions. What was more important was simply to ask, how long are you going to work? How many hours do you work every day? How much do you get? When do you hope to go back? The future seemed a little more limited, the scope of life quite narrow. So once you have expressed your frustration in the opening pages of a book, you can perhaps go on to explore other contexts and try to answer the question which you are not able to ask in the first few pages. So I hope, inshallah, that I'll be able to do that over the next coming months and years and produce that book, which I hope all of you will read. Raji Saab mentioned this book, Immigrant Montana. I just want to go back in some ways even further. What happened was that when I was finishing my PhD, I'm assuming people don't necessarily know much about what I'm talking, so what I have written, so I'll just give you a little account of it. When I was finishing my PhD, the rise of what one would call Hindu fascism had its effect, finally its culmination at that time in the mob's demolition of the Babri Masjid in December 1992. And one of the things which I wrote about in a book called Bombay, London, New York, because our forum here that which we are meeting under has the word Indian diaspora in it. One of the points I made in that book was that in the Indian diaspora, the soft emotion of nostalgia has been turned into the hard emotion of fundamentalism. I was referring to the support for the building of a temple on a disputed site. And for people here in this country, I'm speaking here from New York, for people in this country sending gold bricks to help build that temple. So in some ways, the work I was starting to do was the investigation of this easy, sentimentalized notion of nostalgia for the motherland, and to supplant it with a more interrogative idea of what it means to belong to a nation and also to belong to the world. What happened at that time was that I also became aware of a person through an obituary. The person's name was Iqbal Ahmed. He was a professor at Hampshire College here. I learned that he was from the obituary again. I learned that he was from a village close to my own hometown in Patna. And that at the time of the partition, as a boy, he had walked across the length of India, breadth of India is the right word to use actually, to Pakistan. And he had been a friend of Edward Said's, for example. Edward Said's Culture and Imperialism, his monumental work, is, I think, dedicated to Iqbal Ahmed. But Iqbal Ahmed was also a friend of a hero of mine, John Berger, a British writer, art critic. He won the Booker Prize for his novel G. And I discovered, although Iqbal Ahmed is not named in that story, there was a small account of a young man who during the partition travels across to Pakistan. And I became very interested in this man. I thought Iqbal Ahmed's insistence, if you go on YouTube, you can watch a video of Iqbal Ahmed's BBC documentary produced around the time of the 50 years of Indian and Pakistani independence, 1997, I believe it is, sir, where he mentions his admiration for Rabindranath Tagore, who had insisted that nationalism is a disease because it is an ideology of difference. You believe you're an Indian because you're not Pakistani, for example, or the Indian who dissents is to be sent to Pakistan, etc., etc. The ideology of difference. So that is what we are seeing in America right now. The idea of the insistence on a self, on an idea of a self, on an imaginary idea of a self that does not allow for the presence of the other, or that needs actually the other as a constant reminder in order to maintain its own security. So Trump has to insist that criminals and rapists are what are the names that we have to give to anyone who has migrated here from the south, and that you have to root out that sign of difference in order to secure our borders and to secure really the boundaries of the self. For the self to be autonomous, sufficient, healthy, lasting, what you have to do is always, always, always incite in the public eye, in the public memory, this notion of the other who has to be rooted out. Without the presence of the other, and this is the evil of nationalism, there is no sense, there is no rational basis for it. So this was Iqbal Ahmed's appeal via Tagore while we were celebrating our independence of how to understand our identity. In that novel, Immigrant Montana, that Raji Sahab mentioned, the starting point was actually Iqbal Ahmed. I thought I would first write about the kind of cosmopolitanism or the kind of global belonging that Iqbal Ahmed represented, because what I read in the newspapers, and then I went to Hampshire College to look at his letters and his archives, was that the FBI under Edgar Hoover arrested him because he was protesting the war in Vietnam. And the evidence for the arrest and the case that was filed against him and two Christian priests and a nun, the evidence was that, yes, he had, at an evening gathering in Connecticut, he had said that they should kidnap Kissinger. They should kidnap Kissinger and then produce him in a public court and say, Mr. Kissinger, you are under arrest. That idea, the case was thrown out, he was released, and he went to complete his PhD. He was at Princeton at that time. He went to complete his PhD back in Tunisia. He was involved in the Algerian Revolution. He was also a friend of Yasser Arafat, and was an active spokesman on the Palestinian cause. And I felt that this was inspiring. And this is what we should learn about. Not the narrow defense of a nationalist ideal that is exclusionary, but instead a participation in an internationalist vision where your idea of belonging is actually inclusionary, where everyone's pain is your pain. You're not only pained by the suffering of one, you're pained by the suffering of all. And if you think one is denied freedom, then all are denied freedom. I interviewed his former wife, I interviewed his daughter, I interviewed Iqbal Ahmed's former students. I felt that the story, because I was missing my central character, he was dead already. I went to his village in Gaya, I spoke to his deaf aunt and other relatives, but I felt that it was lacking something, and so I thought instead of non-fiction, the biography, I would turn it into fiction. And I thought, what would a young man coming from India, who has his own interests and his own young adult passions, upon encountering a professor like Iqbal Ahmed, what would this person learn? And I thought, if I put it into a story like that, it would be a more powerful account of a young person's journey through life towards learning, and yet be a story of, flawed access to life. Let me see if I can test your patience. Page, do I think I need to read out anything about Iqbal Ahmed to you? In all the conversations with his students, I thought what he was very interested in doing was making people understand what is it that they carry, what is it that people carry in their hearts and in their minds when they cross borders, for example. One of the students told me about his coming to class and Iqbal Ahmed talking to him about the Battle of Algiers, which is a wonderful documentary about the Algerian Revolution. And I'm just trying to tell you how I write. I did not change much in the account that the student offered about Iqbal Ahmed teaching him about Algeria, or about the partition, or about Vietnam. And I have mixed together fiction and non-fiction in order to produce this account of a young man who comes from India, hears Dr. Ruth on the radio, who used to be a sex expert, by the way, and who was also opposed to the war in Vietnam, and at the same time talking a little bit about what Said and post-colonialism, etc. meant. Here are two paragraphs that I want to read. By the way, since we are among friends, I also want to tell you that I included photographs, and I had to pay a lot of money, $300, for the rights to have this unusual photograph of Kissinger in the. मगर मैंने सोचा कि भैया एक डॉक्यूमेंट्री किस्म की रिपोर्ट होनी चाहिए, So I had that photograph too. Mr. Kissinger, you are under arrest. This was to be said after dessert. Everything would be calm, nothing out of the ordinary. Ehsan. So Iqbal Ahmed's name I changed to Ehsan here. Ehsan believed that because they were academics and had friends in common, they could get invited to a dinner where Kissinger was also a guest. People sipped cognac in such circles. Ehsan would choose the moment to speak. He was articulate. His words commanded attention. He would get up and make the announcement about the arrest, addressing Kissinger directly. Then Kissinger was to be taken to a meeting of anti-war activists. He would be questioned about war policies. The police by then would have started a massive manhunt, of course. The accused was to be moved from one hiding place to another, and within a day or two, a statement would be issued that he had been arrested for the crimes of war. The point was to educate the public. If you get a chance, in other words, I would like you to Google Iqbal Ahmed if you do not know about him and hear him speaking at anti-war protest rallies. It will be an education. तो हमने नॉस्टैल्जिया की बात कर दी, हमने क्रिटिक की बात कर दी, हमने सर्च फॉर अ ग्लोबल कॉस्मोपॉलिटिज्म की बात सामने रख रहा हूं. Now I want to talk a little bit about language. In the same way as many words for heat, on one hand, could be referring to environmental politics and an awareness about global climate change, vagara vagara. And last semester, I taught a course here called Writing About the Anthropocene, so that my students could be equipped a little bit to think about कि भैया सियाटल या कैलिफोर्निया में अगर फायर्स हुए और यहाँ तक across the country you are getting the smoke in the air, how to write about it, how to write about the reports they read about the heat wave in India or in Arizona, how to write about the waters rising not just in the Bangladesh but here near Miami, and to make the connections between Miami and Bangladesh. So it is many words for heat refers to all that, but it is also about having the right word, many words. My interest, in other words, is in language, shabd, ya alfaz, how to look for the words and find the right words. In that, although I'm interested in doing creative writing, whether it is in fiction or in non-fiction, in the search for the right words, in the US ये किताब निकली थी Every Day I Write the Book, मगर in India it is published under the title Writing Badly is Easy. अगर आप लोग कभी भी इंडिया के कोर्ट्स की जजमेंट पढ़ें, the language is appallingly baroque, over the top, often ungrammatical, but also pompous. Clarity नहीं है बिल्कुल. The English language came to us as a bureaucratic imposition. I mean, Lord Macaulay's dream was to produce a class of clerks. And it has been difficult for us to get rid of that. My own father was a wonderful man, and he was, a peasant's son and had climbed up in life, and I appreciate that. But in his letters to us, he was very, very formal. And I think and he would write in English. And I think I'm describing a situation that is not very uncommon. It is actually very common, where our relationship to language is still a colonial one. माने मैं थोड़ी सी जनरलाइज कर रहा हूँ और बड़े broadly बोल रहा हूँ, मगर it is true that our relationship to language is not very supple, inventive, free. तो मैंने तो भैया I think it is as a public service, मैंने वो किताब लिखी है Writing Badly is Easy, और यहाँ पर graduate students को भी liberate करने के लिए from writing uninteresting and dull academic work. Every day I write the book. So that has also been part of my journey to how to find freedom in this language that is not mine. In my native Bihar, I'm often told by people, अच्छा तो आप अंग्रेजों लोगों को अंग्रेजी सिखा रहे हैं, वाह, हाँ? So that is a matter of a little bit of pride for me, but not entirely, because अंग्रेजी सिखाना in a way that liberates me and liberates my students is the more important and slightly more invisible goal. और उसके लिए ज़्यादा मेहनत करने की ज़रूरत है. More work and more labor is required. मगर I just wanted to mention that. One thing I've been trying to do again, and I'm keeping an eye on the time, is कि भाई,
Don't feel constrained by time. You're doing very well, and we are enjoying it really.
thank you. लेकिन ये भी है साहब, राजी साहब, टाइम इज पासिंग फॉर अस. लगता है कि अब बहुत ज़्यादा समय भी नहीं है, इसलिए ज़रा यूज इट थ्रिफ्टिली. तो वन ऑफ द थिंग्स आई हैव बीन ट्राइंग टू डू, आई से टू माय स्टूडेंट्स कि इफ यू आर अ राइटर and if you're trying to report on life, on the world, you always have to keep a notebook. Or I ask them to write 150 words every day, and I ask them to walk mindfully for 10 minutes every day. जरा mindful walking कीजिए, लगे कि आप हर with every step you're planting lotuses with your feet. So to practice what I have been preaching, during COVID I started keeping a journal where I would also do drawings. जैसे कि उस दिन मान लीजिए न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स में रिपोर्ट निकली कि भैया डेथ्स के बारे में, तो आई वुड कट इट आउट, पेस्ट इट ऑन अ कार्डबोर्ड एंड डू अ लिटिल ड्राइंग. ये आप चिड़िया देखिए. अब जैसे कि ड्यूरिंग द 1918 पैंडेमिक, स्पेनिश फ्लू, the children had a little chant when they skipped. I had a little bird, its name was Enza. I opened the window and influenza. तो influenza पर उनकी थोड़ी सी पन थी. So this was being sung in Philadelphia during the flu pandemic. Or, so I would draw flowers. I thought March, April, May of 2020, the obituaries were coming out every day, started to come out. There was so much death. But there were also flowers coming. So there was a report says, those we have lost. But there was also just outside my window, new daffodils coming out. So I had started that practice at that time. And I also wanted to do something where I would take a newspaper photograph. A man is being lynched in Jharkhand. His name is Saif Ansari, if I remember right. Mohammad Naeem. And Alimuddin Ansari was another meat trader. And I was thinking, what can I do as a writer or as an artist with something in the news? And that has been the search that I have been embarked on. So I'll talk a little bit about this now. These journals are with drawings and diary entries. I did the blue book. Then I did the yellow book the following year. And then the year after that, which was last year, I did the green book. Because Ravi साहब तो साइंटिस्ट हैं, वो जानते होंगे येलो और ब्लू मिलाने से ग्रीन मिलती है. So that is the final volume of the book. What I wanted to talk about is, since I mentioned the lynching of a meat trader, in the same way as I started my journey by thinking a little bit about my journey as a writer from the time I was a graduate student about the demolition of a mosque, and thinking of the consolidation of an ultra-right politics around that act, which brought that party to power and now to hegemonic dominance, which I do not know how long it will last. I have been trying to understand how to present to my readers what they see in the news, how to turn everyday life into news, and how to translate news into something that is a part of our narrative and can be worked upon or thought differently. ताकि हम लोग, we are not passive victims of news, but we are agents thinking about the news and acting on it. When Trump was elected for the first time, he and he had not yet, the inauguration had not yet taken place. There were 2 or 3 days before that. So this would be January 2021. Obama gave an interview to the literary critic of the New York Times. And President Obama said that his elder daughter had been reading Ernest Hemingway's A Movable Feast, in which there was a line, "Write the truest sentence you know." And Obama said that his daughter was becoming interested in documentary work. ठीक है भाई. I was struck by the idea of writing the truest sentence you know, because as I just said to you, I ask my students and I follow the practice myself of writing every day. मगर मैंने सोचा कि in this time of bad fiction called fake news, what is the place of fiction? And I thought instead of writing the truest sentence I knew, I would write down what was one piece of fake news that was broadcast that day. और वो मैं एक journal रखने लगा. And from that journal, this book came out called A Time Outside This Time, in which I was trying to make sense. Let us also remember, I was trying to make sense of fake news. Let us also remember that if we talk about lynchings, and of course this work began with the lynching of Muhammad Akhlaq in Dadri outside Delhi, and I wrote about that on his first anniversary. I was trying to think, bhaiya, in lynchings maybe this news is spread, this fake news, कि भैया यहाँ पे है कोई और वो बीफ खा रहा है या वो गाय को काटने जा रहा है या ये या वो. How is this spread? This is spread so often by WhatsApp. And what is it about these stories that seizes people's attention, and how to make sense of alternative stories? How do you produce counter stories? Or is that even the job that we should do? You following me? सब ठीक है? हाँ, तो मैं आपको, to illustrate a couple of these things, I'm going to read a little bit, with your permission, from A Time Outside This Time. ठीक है ना राजी साहब?
सर एकदम ठीक है. Wonderful.
चलिए. When I was a boy in my hometown, and it had been raining for 3 days, it became so that it was no longer possible to have any consciousness of a time when it wasn't raining. Rain soaked through the walls, and slime grew on the inside, in the corners, and even on the ceiling. Phones stopped working. No newspapers came. Birds disappeared from the wet branches of trees. No question of going to school. There was no language outside of, "It is raining outside." Water stood in the distant fields. It rushed down pipes and roared in the gutters. The roads became rivers in which people waded or swam. Brij Bihari brought his cows onto the veranda at the back of our house. Mother would switch on the fans in one room to try to dry the wet clothes. It was all in vain. The snake found in the toilet was proof that the world outside had changed, and the natural order had been turned upside down. Only rain was permanent. You could do nothing but wait. I'm saying all this because that is exactly what has happened to us politically. We cannot imagine, I cannot imagine sometimes, a time outside this time. The people who are in power must also be deluded enough to believe this. They must think that their power is eternal, that they will sit on the throne forever. And it is this thought that is their failing, because it condemns them to missteps and error. Stay alert. You will hear the rain stop and the wind shift. The powerful will not be waiting for it. But that moment will come. It will mark the beginning of their doom, their end. So that is from the beginning of a time outside this time, which tells the story of a writer and his sociologist wife. But there are also meditations on the spreading of lies and lies. There is a chapter called The Velocity of Lies. हमने पढ़ा था कि गांधी जी, when he went to South Africa and started his struggle, satyagraha, he used the little money he had to buy a printing press because he thought that it was important to have a newspaper. But the interesting thing about the newspaper was that there should be diaspora के बारे में news होनी चाहिए. What is happening to the Indian community in different parts of the world? But his belief was that you could not simply present news. News had to be broken up with meditative statements by people like Thoreau and Tolstoy. Unki idea thi that the news, the consumption of news should itself be slowed down. तो गांधी जी तो उस्ताद थे, तो मैंने उनकी सबक लेकर यहाँ पर एक पैराग्राफ है जो मैं आपको सुनाना चाहता हूँ. Some of you must have heard the comedian Jimmy Fallon in this country say, let's slow jam the news. तो मैंने वो फ्रेज जरा चुरा ली है और गांधी जी और जिमी फैलन को एक साथ मिलाते हुए मैंने यहाँ पर एक पैराग्राफ लिखा है, इन अ टाइम आउटसाइड दिस टाइम, जो मैं आपसे आई वांट टू शेयर विथ यू. Why must one slow jam the news? Because all that is new will become normal with astonishing speed. You will go to visit your father and discover that he has pledged himself to the service of the great leader. Or you will visit your friend's house and it will take a minute or more to realize that a meeting is underway and now everyone is looking at you with suspicion. You notice one fine day that all the signs on the road have changed. Your town has a new name. Dogs have grown fat on flesh torn from corpses lining the street where you grew up. The beautiful tree outside your window is dead and has been dead for some time and has, in fact, just now burst into flames. So that is a time outside this time. I'm now coming towards the end. मेरी एक नई किताब है, पिछले साल आई है, it's called My Beloved Life. उसमें भी मैं वही सोच रहा हूँ, वही सारी बातें, but putting it in a generational frame. What was different about my father? What is different about my sister? How a single story is not complete by itself. As my hero John Berger said, no story can be told as though it were the only one. यानी कि एक कहानी के पास दूसरी एक कहानी जरूर है कहीं कोने में या छिपी हुई. And the point of the writer is in some ways to both draw attention to the story that is being told and to the story beside it, to illuminate, to bring into your attention to the story beside it. तो कभी आपको मौका मिले तो आप उस किताब को भी पढ़ें. ऑडिबल पर मेरी ही आवाज में, इफ इट डजंट इरिटेट यू, आप उसको सुन भी सकते हैं. मैं सोच रहा हूं कि थोड़ी सी उसमें से भी आपको एक पैराग्राफ, दो पैराग्राफ पढ़ दूं. So the first part of the story, My Beloved Life, is told in the voice of a father born in 1935. The second part of the story is told in the voice of a diasporic Indian, his daughter, who has come to Emory University to study journalism and then gets hired by CNN. और वो तरह तरह के दुनिया ढूंढती है, घूमती है और लोगों की जिंदगी पे रिपोर्ट करती है. During COVID, her father dies. She is unable to go there, to Patna. And she writes, after I came back from reporting on the COVID second wave in India, I began to put together what I had assembled there, a document offering testimony about people's daily expenses and their struggles during the pandemic. I wanted to do this story because it was essential to preserve the record. As it was, the government in Delhi denied that there had been any deaths during the second wave because of oxygen shortage. The junior health minister said in the parliament that no deaths due to lack of oxygen had been specifically reported. Earlier, the chief minister of Haryana had said that the dead were dead and gone. What use was it to talk of them? Let's move on. In my report, ordinary people recount their struggles to get help for their dying loved ones. They talk about their long wait at a hospital, and then at another hospital, or two more, or, as in one case, 5 hospitals, and then again at the crematorium. A young woman who had watched her brother-in-law die on the floor of the emergency ward of Deen Dayal College Hospital spoke to me. Did an ambulance come when you called? How long did it take to arrive? How long did it have to wait outside a hospital? Was there a doctor available at the government hospital? What did the private hospital charge you? How much did they ask for at first? How long did it take to get a death certificate, and how much did it cost? Does the certificate mention that the death was due to COVID? Was it possible for the family to receive the financial help promised by the government if one of the earning members had died of the virus? Were you able to cremate your relative? Did you have to bury him or her outside the villages? How much did the wood cost? I sought answers to these questions and others. Although I didn't say this in my report, I believe strongly that we are in touch with a great, astonishing mystery when we put honest words down on paper to register a life and to offer witness. Everything else is ordinary. तो ये रही बात जो प्रोफेसर रॉय ने भी कही थी, मैंने उसको दोहरा दिया. थैंक यू. एक लास्ट चीज अब आपसे बताना चाहता हूं या कहना चाहता हूं. आई हैव बीन गोइंग अराउंड द कंट्री, आई मीन इंडिया, एंड मैं जैसे लोगों की तस्वीर लेता हूं, एंड आई आस्क देम टू राइट इन देयर ओन वर्ड्स समथिंग अबाउट देम. तो लाइक दिस इज अ कपल, इनका नाम पटना में है, इनका नाम है मोना झा और जावेद अख्तर खान. तो उन्होंने लिखा है, मरने के अनेक कारण हो सकते हैं, किसी के मारने की एक भी नहीं होता. अल्बेर कामू. हमने अल्बेर कामू के 3 नाटक लिए हैं, कैलिगुला, जस्ट असैसिन्स, क्रॉस पर्पस. तीनों में कामू हत्या की मनोविज्ञान को समझने की कोशिश करते हैं. तो ये इनकी एक छोटी सी रिपोर्ट. उसी तरह आई हैव अर्लियर स्पोकन टू यू अबाउट हाउ, फॉर एग्जांपल, आई डोंट नो, आई मीट लेट्स से, जैसे ये दोनों बच्चे हैं, दीज आर मैनुअल लेबरर्स. इनसे मेरी मुलाकात, ये झारखंड से हैं, गोवा में या बिहार से हैं, पता चले. इनका एक, उनमें से सिर्फ एक लिखना जानता था, उसका नाम था मोहम्मद सलमान. उसने लिखा है, हम दोनों भाई हैं और हम खगड़िया जिले से, लेकिन काम दोनों हम खगड़िया जिले से हैं, लेकिन हम दोनों भाई गोवा में रहते हैं और दोनों भाई मजदूरी करते हैं. यहाँ मजदूरी करके एक दिन का पगार 750 से 800 रुपए मिलता है. मोहम्मद सलमान. तो एक तरह से मैं आई एम कलेक्टिंग जिस रिपोर्ट पे मैं काम कर रहा हूं, मेनी वर्ड्स फॉर हिट, लोगों की कहानियां. द वन आई वांट टू एंड विथ is one which I want to share but also invite you. मैं अपनी ईमेल यहाँ पर लिख देता हूँ. आप लोगों को भी दिल करे तो कभी मुझसे बात करें, आपसे भी मैं पूछूंगा आपकी कहानी. तो ये आप लोगों को जो मैं तस्वीर दिखाने वाला हूँ, ये एक हमारे दोस्त हैं जो वहाँ थिएटर में भारत में काम करते हैं, बंबई में. उनका नाम है दानिश हुसैन. इफ आई रिमेंबर राइट, राही मासूम रजा के नेफ्यू हैं ये शायद. तो इनसे मैंने कहा, भाई मैं रिपोर्टर हूं, लोगों से आई आस्क द क्वेश्चंस क्वाइट डायरेक्टली. मैंने इसे कहा, यार ऐसा है, देयर वाज अ वुमन इन नाजी जर्मनी, अ जूविश वुमन हु वाज अ साइकियाट्रिस्ट. और जब नाजिज्म की राइज हुई तो वो लोगों से पूछने लगी कि आप किस तरह के ख्वाब देखते हैं, व्हाट काइंड ऑफ ड्रीम्स और नाइटमेयर्स कम टू यू. और उसने शी स्मगल्ड व्हाट शी reported on out of the country. And it became a book that was recently republished here because usko khas attention nahi mili. But it is called, I think, if I remember right, Dreams of the Third Reich है, ऐसे कुछ है. तो मैंने अपने दोस्त से कहा, उसने, आई वॉज ऑन अ बुक टूर, बंबई में उसको खाने पे बुलाया. तो मैंने कहा यार ऐसा है, इन रिसेंट टाइम्स डिड यू सी अ ड्रीम, डिड यू हैव अ ड्रीम इन योर, जिसमें, और अ नाइटमेयर इन विच यू आर रिकॉग्नाइजेबली अ मुस्लिम. तो उसने कहा हाँ यार, जस्ट द अदर डे आई हैड दिस ड्रीम. तो मैंने कहा जरा इसको यहाँ पर लिख दो, जो भी तुम्हारा सपना था. तो वो मैं आपको पढ़ने वाला हूं. बीच ख्वाब, जब मेरी आंख खुली तो मैंने अपने आप को एक छत पे पाया. वो मेरी छत नहीं थी. छत एक गेटेड कम्युनिटी पॉश मोहल्ले के घर की छत थी, लेकिन जहां मेरा भी घर था. एक दंगाइयों का गिरोह मोहल्ले में मुसलमानों के घरों की लिस्ट लिए घूम रहा था और उन्हें ढूंढ ढूंढ कर मार रहा था. मेरे रंगकर्मी दोस्त मेरी जान बचाने में जुटे हुए थे, पर कुछ खास परेशान नहीं नजर आ रहे थे. बीच बीच में इंस्टा रील या यूट्यूब वीडियो देखते और एहसास लगाते, पर जैसे ही फोन पर गिरोह की मूवमेंट का अलर्ट आता, मुझे भागने की राह दिखाते. इधर से निकल जाइए, आप सेफ हैं. मैंने अपने ही मुल्क में दहशत से चूर भागता सोचता कि कब तक भागूंगा, और फिर मेरी आंखें खुल गईं. दानिश हुसैन. तो फॉर दोज हु डू नॉट हैव हिंदी और उर्दू, मैं इसको जल्दी से ट्रांसलेट कर देता हूँ कि व्हेन माय in my dream, when I was on the roof of a house. It was not my own house, but it was in a posh gated community, and where I also had my house. A mob of rioters was moving around with a list of Muslim homes in order to kill them. My theater friends were worried about me, and they wanted to protect me, but they didn't seem unusually perturbed. They were watching Insta reels or YouTube videos, but now and then when they would get alerts on their phone about the movement of the rioters, they would say to me, "Run this way, you are safe, go this way." And I, running, huffing, panting, exhausted, kept thinking, how long in my own country will I keep running in order to save myself? तो यहीं पे मैं अब शांत हो जाता हूँ.
Well, of course, in time, and it was, I'm speechless. I don't want to express much, but I really digested a lot. It is wonderful, very impressive. Let's hear Aisha for the concluding remarks, and after that we will have some question and answer. Aisha.
May I begin with a question to Amitava Kumar? The last
जरूर.
bit that you included in your talk was about swapping the fate in a nightmare, or swapping religious identity in a nightmare. Was it this? I couldn't follow it.
Yeah. The original thing that inspired me was a story, a book that was produced by a Jewish psychiatrist in Nazi Germany who would ask people, Jews, what kind of dreams they were having. And often they were very literal dreams. जैसे कि मैंने देखा कि जब, Goebbels came to my home and he saw that I had not hung the Nazi flag. And then he took me away, and my arm could not move, and I could not give the salute, and this caused me great consternation. I did not know what to do, and unable and desperate, I woke up. ठीक है. तो उससे मैं लेकर इंस्पिरेशन, मैं अपने दोस्त से पूछा, दानिश से, कि भाई, in a recent dream, do you remember being identifiably a Muslim? He's a Muslim man, so I said कि भैया, I just thought कि मैं एक comparison कर सकता हूँ क्या? And he came up with this story कि हाँ, just the other day I had this dream जिसमें एक गिरोह मुसलमान घरों की लिस्ट लेकर घूम रहा था और मैं अपने जान बचाने की कोशिश में था. So is that clear? Have I answered your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, you did. Thank you so very much, Razi Sahab, for inviting me to conclude this brilliant talk by Amitava Kumar. And I have no idea how I'm going to do justice to this session that has been assigned to me. I have to conclude, but I'm very sure that it will remain inconclusive, as you know, we all, our lives are. And in literature, especially, we do not look for anything definite. Our answers are usually in a realm of twilight. We try to find our answers, and yet we know that our struggle to find answers will go on. When I came to know that I had to conclude this session rather recently, last week, I thought of reading Amitava Kumar, and the first thing I read, written by you, was a brilliant piece, which is the eponymous, title of this talk to, Many Words for Heat, Many Words for Hate. I read it in Granta, and I really was touched by the fact that you're a writer, Amitava Kumar is a writer who thinks deeply and feels even more deeply, has the level of empathy for other fellow beings, so much so that I was just thinking that this kind of a person can be a solution to the problem that we have around us. I jotted down a few ideas when I read your piece, Many Words for Heat, Many Words for Hate. And I'm going to share those ideas, those points with you right now. So you reminded me, Amitava Kumar reminded me of Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude, which in a piece of novel, a very famous piece of fiction that has been celebrated, and it is often prescribed in MA courses. And in this novel, we know that in the fictional town that the protagonist founds, a kind of plague descends, that is collective amnesia, on the village of Macondo. And when I was reading a review on your writings, it said that it was, I think, New York Times that had New York fiction that said that you defy zeitgeist. Talking about Amitava Kumar. So a time outside the time, something that you just talked about, a text you talked about. So everyone starts forgetting very important things in their lives, and they start writing. The scientist, an amateur scientist, that is one of the main characters in this novel, 100 Years of Solitude, Jose Arcadia Buendia, he starts writing the names of objects in his lab, in his house, and other villagers also start following him. And they know that their future is not okay, not fine, because they all will need the jottings that they are, the name tags that they are producing. The primary themes of the novel include semantic amnesia and cyclical nature of history. So from this cyclical nature of history that Amitabh, you talk about in your piece, the same one that I just I had read in Granta. This is Many Words for Heat and Many Words for Hate. You talk about cyclical nature of history. You refer to your friend Ravish Kumar, and you say that forgetfulness is something that may lead to forgetting good things that we once lived with our neighbors in peace, happily. But it doesn't have an ever after, since then you discuss how history is unfolding in the nation that we all come from. Most of us, I believe, here in this session come from. So majoritarianism has taken over, and one kind of hegemonic discourse is trying to wipe out all other voices. So this made me think of another writer, that is Milind Kundera, who in his opening passage of The Unbearable Lightness of Being discusses the weight of existence. Nietzsche's recurrence of history makes existence too heavy, like a mass, too heavy to carry. And semantic lightness would make it irrelevant, as you say, as you refer to, referring to your friend Ravish Kumar, you claim that's so true. We must remember, without remembering, life cannot go on. We'll forget history. Fighting against heaviness, which may become permanently protuberant. On the other hand, lightness makes it all irrelevant. It is an important job for a Ravish or an Amitav, for people who are sensitive and who write in their way, in their own way. They try to take the world, I don't know how to put it, on the path of love, care, and sharing. People like Amitav Kumar write and write so that we don't forget our history, we don't forget our living together, we don't forget the lessons history taught us, and we don't repeat mistakes of history, so that we have the possibility of escaping both. Milind Kundera talks about the reign of terror. So if it goes on and on a repeat mode, it would become too heavy. It would become, definitely it will be a cycle of trauma, traumatic history. But at the same time, if you don't remember the lessons that we drew from there, from a particular event, a particular tragedy that occurred in history, we tend to repeat the mistakes that we made in the past. So we have the possibility of escaping both by writing, by remembering, ossification, as well as the unbearable lightness of being. In Amitav's writing here, Amitav Kumar's writing, there is a struggle against semantic amnesia induced by lexical multiplicity, that is a lot of words, or lack thereof, just one word. Whether we can use multiple words for different shades of heat, color, and creed, or on the other hand, we reduce it all to one, something which, Adichie also warns against. She calls it the danger of one story. So Amitav Kumar's writing is for the species that understands and remembers, that is, the human remembers to love and why to love and why not to hate. I'll also share, because I'm reading your latest fiction, My Beloved Life. So I'm also going to share something that I observed here. A remarkable quality of Amitav Kumar's fiction is polyphony. I'm a literary critic, so I'm going to use, literary terms, critical terms, of course. So there's a plurality of valid consciousness in his fiction. For example, My Beloved Life is peopled by Ramdev Majhi, a Musahari है ना, क्या है वो उसका कास्ट?
मुसाहर, हाँ.
फिर Mrityunjay Rai, who thinks money entitles him to be caste discriminatory, or he justifies his caste discrimination because he thinks that he can pay that boy in the hostel for doing his chores. And even in a college in Patna, कहता है फोकट का काम नहीं है ना, फोकट का काम नहीं है. And then your novel also has interesting characters like Aslam Master, who doubles as a pehelwan too. He's not only a master. So these interesting characters, very strange, quaint, they're found only in Indian villages, I believe. वो पूरी पिक्चर इमर्ज हो मेरे जहन में आई कि कैसे मतलब ऐसा this is possible in India, and it happens everywhere. But the point is that I can relate with such stories because I'm an Indian, and I also know how in villages a master can also be a singer, and also be a wrestler. So he Amitava Kumar speaks of the ways people handle trauma. This is a very important theme in his fiction, I believe. And because I've just read this, rather, I'm in the middle of it. So I know that mnemonic power of literature is something that you revel in, you try to highlight it, and you try to use it as some kind of therapeutic, you know, therapeutic enterprise in order to tell the world what it needs to remember again and again. So he talks about how people handle trauma in this novel, and in this character, I just referred to, that is uh, Ramdev. He says, may I read one line, one sentence? Ramdev had probably observed all this himself, taken it all, taken it all in as a boy, but he harbored some uncertainty about these early memories. It was likely that his psyche had tried to erase the memory of humiliation. The past wasn't a blank slate, it was a dark hole. For some, a relief from trauma or some kind of escape from trauma may come, uh, or for some, handling traumas of the past may come by suppressing it. That may not be a proper handling, because as Freud, if we can a little bit believe in what he said, if memories are suppressed, traumas become permanent, some kind of mass that Milind Kundera refers to in the first passage of his few paragraphs of his novel. If trauma is gone in, I mean, if trauma is handled by going through it, it's a better way of handling it, because it can make a person understand their history better, and perhaps it can also give some kind of therapy. It can provide them with some kind of relief, and escaping, going around it, perhaps may not lead to any kind of meaningful grappling of the traumatic past. I also heard you with rapt attention, and I would like to say that a few things that I have taken from your talk. Um, uh, the fact that you're Amitav Kumar, I shouldn't be referring to you directly, rather. He's writing docufiction, like mockumentary. So in writing docufiction, he's making a lot of putting in a lot of hard work by interacting with people. So this is a new genre of fiction which he in a way is pioneering, I would say, since I don't think this genre of fiction has been worked on much, and people have practiced it a lot. It's a new burgeoning genre, and people often hide facts under the layers of veils of fiction, but you clearly say that you're basing your stories and writings, the stories that are not non-fiction, you're basing them on people you're meeting and talking to. So it's very clear that it's a docufiction that you're writing. And let me tell you that all your stories are brilliant. You know how to tie the loose ends by the end of your essay or your fiction, which makes it all so beautiful. You have nostalgia, and at the same time, you don't have that kind of nostalgia which makes something evil or mean pardonable. This is something really good. I was touched by. you talk about cosmopolitanism, and you are teaching a course on writing about the Anthropocenes and your color books. So you've said it all, and you were definitely much more clear. मुझे शेर याद आ रहा है, सुना है बोले तो बातों से फूल झड़ते हैं, ये बात है तो बात करके देखते हैं. So it was so clear. It was so clear. And this is totally unromantically that I've used it here, this couplet. But after what you have said, perhaps I should not try to summarize it, but you were very clear. And how you connect with different characters, how you are inspired by them, how you never try to hide the fact that you are inspired by particular people. You take stories from different people is something really awe-striking and very honest. Let me also say something, there's something about news consumption that you said. It's very true that we watch news, we rather consume news without having any kind of sensitivity. So it becomes some kind of distant. There's some kind of alienation effect that is induced when we are watching too many news items displayed in front of us on a telly. What happens there is that we are totally dissociated with what is happening. There may be a genocide unfolding on TV, and we may easily be eating our dinner. This is something that you pointed out, and you say that meditative nature of news consumption should be inculcated. And this is something that I'm going to use in my classroom.
Thank you.
I would definitely talk about it, that we should. I think I've taken my time.
Thank
And
you.
I've taken my time, and the floor should be now open for Q&A. So there were certain things that I can discuss later with you. Yeah, one last sentence may I add? Politicians obsess over borders, states, and parochial nationalism that you talked about. Artists like, artists who write and whose concerns are cosmopolitan, they believe in borderlessness and perhaps even statelessness.
Wonderful.
Their concerns are transnational. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wonderful concluding remark and wonderful presentation. Before we go to question and answer session, in a continuity, it is in Urdu. Next coming Saturday will be on Urdu literature. A very senior professor and a very well-established poet at Aligarh Muslim University, Professor Siraj Ajmali. He's going to talk about his department's contribution as well as his own poetry. So the title says Siraj Ajmali Se Adbi Guftagu, and he will be introduced, and as well as acting as an anchor, Dr. Moeed Rashidi, who is a rising star at Aligarh Muslim University Urdu department, a wonderful poet. So stay tuned to that. Now, question and answer session will be moderated by our host, Dr. Rafat Hussain, who is just back from India. Rafat, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Razibai. It is good to be back after 2 weeks of absence. And I must admit that I had a feeling that I'm missing something important. So that is a feeling, and I am not very proud of that. But anyway, thank you so much for Professor Kumar and to Dr. Roy and Professor Rashid. It was a wonderful talk, very cosmopolitan in nature, and of course, it was Professor Kumar narrated the story very vividly. And so the session is open, the question and answer session is open now. You can raise your digital hand or show your interest in a chat box, and I will monitor both of them. And so far, Dr. Kumar, you see there are a lot of comments, good comments, but let's wait for the question and answer.
Dr.
There are two names. Let's begin with Dr. Syed Amir, and then I will invite Dr. Nazir Ahmed. Amir bhai.
Thank you. I'm very impressed with the talk, Professor Kumar. It is not often one hears a talk as inspiring as you delivered this afternoon. I think the students, your student at Vassar really are lucky to have you as the professor, because I'm sure you stimulate their thinking. And also, it was interesting how effortlessly, seamlessly you switched from English to Urdu or Hindi. And that sort of made it a little bit more interesting. Naturally, once thinks whether you do the same while you're teaching as Vassar to your students, or is it instinctive or it is deliberate. Coming to that, back to your talk, I think you have also very nicely switched from the topics, starting from Iqbal Ahmed and moving on to topics, and the audience or the listener doesn't even realize that you are progressing so seamlessly to COVID and other topics. So thank you very much. The only thing comes to my mind is that your view obviously is cosmic, very global, all encompassing. Post-colonial era, we see that the trend is now going in the opposite direction. We see Trump in our own country here, Modi, and other in Europe and elsewhere. So instead of what you preach, or nicely, globalism and less nationalism and less parochialism, the trend seems to be going in the opposite direction. Is there a simple explanation for it? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for those kind words. One cannot switch between languages in the US classroom. So that's why I cherish such interactions, जहाँ और भी जुबानों में बात हो सकती है वगैरह वगैरह. So to answer your question, no, it is a puzzle for me. Why the rise of strong men? Is it that crises generate a populist response among the people? कि भाई कोविड आ गई, इस तरह के दिक्कतें हो रही हैं अब लोगों में, तो लोगों को ये एहसास हुआ कि भाई we should have someone who will have will almost impose a dictatorial power. Uski appeal in the amidst crisis. That is one possible explanation. The other is that if globalization, the rapid spread of globalization has meant the breakdown of borders, then a sort of a threat that is created by that has increased the पॉपुलर अपील ऑफ ट्राइबलिज्म कि भाई अगर जो हम आज तक खाते थे वो हमारा खाना ना रहा और अब हम चाउमीन खा रहे हैं मान लीजिए या टाकोस खा रहे हैं, तो इन दैट सेंस हाउ टू देन सडनली रियलाइज नहीं हम तो भाई वी आर अंडर थ्रेट एंड देन प्रोड्यूस अ सेंस ऑफ आइडेंटिटी दैट इज इंसुलर. तो वो क्या साइकोलॉजिकल अपील वो है क्या, मैं भी नहीं जानता हूँ. आई हैव नो आइडिया. But I think the important task is that, as Professor Aisha was saying, is कि भैया against amnesia, things change so much that we forget what happened 7 days ago. And for example, in the case of those lynchings that I was talking about, I was keeping a record of the people who were being killed in those frightful days of murderous vigilantism in India. मगर मुझे याद नहीं रहता था कि भैया was Pehlu Khan the name of the last person who was married, or was it Muhammad Naeem, or was it Muhammad Ansari? Where was it? That feeling has become stronger in me as I get older, that we forget, and we forget in a way where things become a blur. And the task of the writer then is to be the most scrupulous and vigilant witness. तो मैं जो rise of tribalism हो रही है, I want to just be able to record it. I think of my task as that of saying कि हाँ फलाने जगह ऐसा हुआ और किसी ने ऐसी बात कही और फिर ये हुआ. Just to keep a record so that we have a certain sense of which we can't forget. क्यों हो रहा है? I do not have an idea really. So I just have my thoughts, which are tentative hypotheses. I do wish to illuminate it so that others can draw their own conclusions and perhaps lead us better towards more illuminating explanations.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor. The next is Dr. Nazir Ahmed, please.
A brief comment, Rafa Sahab, about Iqbal Ahmed, personal friend of mine. He was our best man at a wedding in January 67.
क्या बात?
Never known a man who had the chutzpah that he did. A man who stood for the dignity of the human as he did. And a man who opposed any oppressive system as he did. Yes, indeed, his formative years were spent with the FLN in Algeria. And he was also a personal friend of Habib Bourguiba, who he admired greatly. I have not known anyone who had the uncanny ability to know why it was that something was happening. For instance, at the conclusion of the Algerian War, he said the French had the war won. They had the Algerians defeated after that very tragic, brutal war. And yet Charles de Gaulle called it up because of the honor of France, not because of military reasons. He opposed the Vietnam War, again with his chutzpah, and he got into trouble with the Barragan brothers. I escaped it at a hair's breadth. He opposed the Pakistan Army intervention in Bangladesh, for which he earned the displeasure of the Pakistan Army. And similarly, immediately after the fall of Bangladesh, he opposed the Indian Army, what it was doing in Bangladesh, for which he earned the displeasure of the Indians. In any case, he went to Pakistan and he wanted a piece of land to build a center. The Pakistan government did not give him the piece of land. I know Hood Bhoy was trying to do something at the Quaid-e-Azam University to establish a chair in his honor. I don't know if it was successful or not successful. I know the co-host has asked me to share my video, but I don't have much to show it except my beard.
कोई बात नहीं.
I just wanted to make that comment, and I hope, sir, that you will be able to capture the essence of who I consider one of the greatest Indians. He was born in Bihar, ended up in Pakistan. And in his last interview that he gave that was recorded in this monogram called Confronting Empire, and he sent me a signed copy of it, he summarizes his deep respect for the dignity of man and why it is and how it is that he opposes any oppressive system. His opposition to America was not based on any dogmatic reasons. He loved America, but he did not like what it was doing in Vietnam and what Vietnam was doing to America. That's all I wanted to say, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Great to hear that someone who is a friend of Iqbal Ahmed was also listening to me. Please check out my novel Immigrant Montana if you have a chance, simply because that is the character on whom I have based. So
I'll do that.
Thank you so much. Next is Dr. Iltafat Hassan, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, sir, for a very good lecture. I'm sorry I missed a fair bit of today's presentation because of some technical difficulties, but I had enough to ask a question that has been going around my head for a while. What is happening in India with BJP now has some parallels with what happened in Germany before the Second World War against the Jews. Do you see an end to this whole problem, which will be peaceful and sensible, or do you see a bloodbath at the end of the day? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the logic of the question and appreciate it. I don't know, let's hope not. Let's hope that there is no bloodbath. But it is, how shall I put it? मैं एक किताब लिख रहा था काफी दिनों पहले. It's called, in this country, it came out as the title, A Foreigner Carrying in the Crook of His Arm a Tiny Bomb. In India, it was published as Evidence of Suspicion. It was a book about terrorism trials after 9/11, because I was trying to write about how often hapless people, Muslims, in some cases a couple of Hindus, were entrapped by the FBI in this so-called war on terror. The real terrorists were never the targets, really. They got people who were stupid and who were lured into plans. Khair, the reason I'm invoking is that I went to report on a family on the Konkan coast. They had been arrested, a Muslim family. They had been arrested and brutally tortured by the government there, because after the attacks carried out on the Taj and Oberoi in Bombay, the police had gone looking for where the RDX had come from on the coast by boats. And they found this family which had in its home a rocket propeller. So they took the whole family into custody, beat them brutally. The hands of the young men in the family had been deformed. But it took a few days, and then they realized that a truck that had been carrying textile equipment and had overturned on the bridge near that village in Konkan had released these. They were weaving machines. They looked like propellers, because they had wings in it for moving the fabric around while it was being woven. And then the police, because these people were Muslim, had assumed, of course, that this was a rocket propeller, when it was actually textile machinery, and they had taken these people in custody. Now, one of those men who had been tortured, he said to me, जानते हैं, जो कुछ वहां हो रहा है अबू ghraib में, it is यहाँ की पुलिस ने उनको सिखाया है. Everything that is being done by the Americans in their torture chambers was taught by our local police. Now, this I recognized as patently false, but on the other hand, I understood how this man, victimized by history, was trying in some ways to make sense of history, was telling a story that linked him to another story that had been that had gained popularity or notice of the world. Otherwise, his own suffering, his own pain, the tortures he had undergone would have been utterly forgotten. I'm telling you all this because I want to say that my interest, where you started with your question about linking with Nazi Germany, my interest in asking my friend Danish कि भाई तूने भी कोई ख्वाब देखी जिसमें तुम मुसलमान हो और कुछ हो रहा है तुम्हारे साथ, was an attempt to try to link one story with another, so that if you have recognized and suffered from the agony or the trauma of that large historical fact, तो भाई हमारी भी जिंदगी का भी उससे कोई एक रिश्ता बनाया जाए ताकि we can make better sense of our joint histories. तो वही मैं कह सकता हूँ. And how to tell stories, link them. I cannot predict, however, that dire situation that you have also imagined. I imagine it too. One doesn't know. Let's hope not.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question, Rafat, please?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Rafat. So, sir, you write at a very visceral level. You are trying to look deep inside the human mind. I got very interested in the evolution of religion a few months ago, and I've watched a lot of YouTube videos and I've read a lot about it. The religions came about in the human history about 10,000 years ago. Before that, hunter-gatherers did not have any specific religion. What is it about the religion that compels people who speak the same language, have the same cultural backgrounds? I go to India quite often. I'm from India. I now live in America, and I go to South a lot. I see people who look the same, dress the same, act the same, speak the same language. The only difference is the religion. What is it, sir, about religion which causes such behavior, which is so ugly and so bad towards each other, or about totally masoom people? Innocent is not a good translation for masoom. Masoom is an incredibly beautiful word. That it compels me to go and torture somebody who has nothing to do with any of that. I just happen to be born in a Muslim household. Somebody else has happened to born in a Hindu household. Nothing more than that, just fate. So, sir, have you thought about that? What is it about it? What is it about religions that is causing all of this? Thank you.
जनाब मैं महज लेखक हूँ, राइटर हूँ, कलम का सिपाही हूँ। ये उसके लिए रजी साहब को किसी को बुलाना पड़ेगा जो अब रिलीजन पर एक्सपर्ट हो। नहीं तो मैं आई एम एंटायरली, have I thought about it? I think about it every day. How do we produce an ideology of difference? You know, what divides people? How do manipulative leaders produce a spark? क्या करते हैं? What are the apparatuses through which hatred is produced between people who should otherwise be comrades, who should otherwise be neighbors? जहर कैसे फैलाया जाता है, इसके बारे में तो मैं हर रोज सोचता हूँ। बट आप जिस तरह की एक्सप्लेनेशन ढूंढ रहे हैं उसके लिए मैं तो बड़ा नाकामयाब हूँ उस मामले में। You'll have to
मिलके सोचते हैं, मिलके सोचते हैं।
मिलके सोचते हैं, वही सही है।
Iltafat Sahab, you should invite him. He is not very far away from you.
अच्छा,
Yeah, he's a well, Iltafat. ये हमारे समधी हैं. So he lives in New Jersey. So not very far away.
सर आपकी रिहाइश कहाँ है?
जी, Poughkeepsie इस शहर का नाम है, ये अपस्टेट न्यूयॉर्क में।
I go past Poughkeepsie quite a lot. तो सर आपसे मुलाकात रहेगी। I will try way to meet you.
रहेगी क्या? अपने घर में बुलाइए दावत।
हाँ, जरा दावत हो।
और क्या? वो दावत वाले आदमी है, दावत बुलाइए इनको। दावत
तो 1-4 जुलाई को रजी और रफत की है, उसमें आप ही तशरीफ लाइएगा।
ये तो मेन गेस्ट नहीं फिर हुए ना, वो तो जबरदस्ती वाले हो गए।
नहीं, इनको आपको
इनको चीफ गेस्ट बनाइए ना, एंड देन
नहीं, ऐसी कोई बात नहीं, ऐसी कोई जरूरत नहीं।
नहीं करेंगे इंशाल्लाह सर। It may be a good day to ask you to come over here to New Jersey. It's not very far. Poughkeepsie is
ठीक है सर, we'll be in touch. ठीक है,
we will bring him. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
भाई, वो मैं देख रहा हूँ कि इनफॉर्मल गुफ्तगू शुरू हो गई है। क्या शुरू हो गई है या?
No, not yet.
नहीं, जब हो जाए।
Hold on, sir. I know it's not.
एक लाइन का मैं बोली दूं कि ये जो सवाल किया था हमारे भाई ने,
भाईजान,
मेरे नजदीक ये है, माई वे और हाईवे। That's the problem. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
मैं कुछ ऐड कर सकती हूँ सर, if you allow, regarding the last question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
वो मुझे इससे it reminded me of, Benedict Anderson. So he talks about religious communities also, how nation states evolved, nation state as a concept evolved. वो उससे पहले religious community की बात करते हैं, उसमें यही कहते हैं कि he starts his discussion in the book by talking about progressive thinking, कि उसकी popularity क्यों नहीं है, since it has an impatient kind of silence vis-a-vis all spiritual questions, कि मरने के बाद क्या होगा, दुनिया में कुछ जैसे accidents क्यों हो जाते हैं. Only religions answer those questions, hence religion is popular. लेकिन religion के साथ ये एक मतलब, this is my sentence, एक problem ये है कि it comes most of the times with a side of fries, with some kind of free food, that is hatred. कि आपका main course religion है, वो it's very important for people, our spiritual yearnings. At the same time, when it comes, you have something for free, that is hatred, it becomes problematic. Progressive thinking nahi popular ho pati hai because humans are weak, mortal creatures. और religious thinking ज़्यादा popular होती है because we need some kind of solace, जो बहुत ही खतरनाक सवालात हैं जिनके हम जवाब नहीं जानते हैं. After all, we think that we are intelligent, but we don't know the answers to many mysteries of life.
Let's ask.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. ये religion वाला मसला मुझको भी बहुत bother करता है. Anyway, we will.
But yeah, invite others, Rafat. You know.
Yeah. So Dr. Raziuddin has asked me to put a couple of people on the spot. Okay, let's see. Nikat, Nikat, Neeraj Kumar, Tariq Farooqi, Smita Agrawal. So let's go one by one. Nikat, please. You wanted to say something or you have a comment?
Oh, hi. Nice to meet everybody. Amitava ji, आप और मैं बहुत पहले मिले थे Seattle में कई बार. So it was really nice to hear your discussion today. I wasn't expected to be put on the spot. I'm cleaning up the kitchen, but I'll take a couple of minutes out.
Yeah.
I just wanted to comment on, and I made that comment in the chat around the rise of strongmen and populism. And with my background is in economics and social policy, so I see things from that particular lens. And so you're right in at least the more recent past, outlining globalization and the rapid rise of globalization, people wanting to turn inwards towards those who they feel more comfortable with, and the fact that the vast swaths of heartlands of most countries that have experienced globalization have been left out of the economic benefits of globalization. So जहाँ हम बात करते हैं यहाँ coastal elites की, because I live in Seattle or people live in New York or California, we experience those benefits, whereas vast swaths of the mainland of the US, similarly with India, main heartlands have not experienced that. So when you have the rise of massive inequality, when you have the rise of concentration of resources and power, people start to get very frustrated. It's easy for strongmen to appear at that moment in time to try to create a sense of identity and bring people together under sort of false narratives that still maintains those echelons of power, but gives people a sense of we have something that's important to us. And human beings by nature are comparative, right? Unless you foster a kind of society, particularly in which you're looking after your neighbors or further than your neighbors, you're interested in the next city over or the next mohalla over. If we're not fostering that purposefully as a community, then there's this notion of comparison between me and my neighbor or the keeping of the Jonases or they're doing better or we're not doing better, you know? ये बहुत ज़्यादा हो जाता है. And social media ने हमें especially पिछले 15 सालों में 10-12 सालों में इतना aware कर दिया है, like a hyper awareness of बाकी दुनिया में क्या हो रहा है, both good and bad, both where people have lots and people have nothing. And so this tendency to compare and to curate has gone into hyperdrive. It's very easy to hijack. It's very easy to dysregulate people emotionally using a variety of tools. Religion is a common one, but it's not the only one. Caste, creed, other lines of identity markers. And so it's a confluence of all of these things. That's why you're seeing the rise across the world. Confluence of economic factors, social factors. The level of communication is at a height that human brain cannot keep up with it. So that's sort of my reading into why we're seeing these.
Thank you. Thank you, Nikat. Thank you so much. Tariq Bhai?
Well, thank you very much. Excellent discussions. I was really impressed by Mr. Amitava Kumar and wonderful. You know, it is very interesting what Nikat just said, but it doesn't explain everything because you see diasporic Indians who are very successful here in the United States, at least so far. And they still support the strong men back home in India, and I possibly could apply to Pakistanis too. I'm being Indian, I'm just going to say India. You know, some take the cosmopolitan view like Amitava Kumar, you know, when you leave your country, you can see it from the bird's eye view. You see both the good and the evil. And every society has that. None is perfect, but you see that and you try to learn from that and learn from the new, whatever you can from the newfound country and grow from it. On the other hand, you see quite a few, and it seems to be a majority of them now, that instead of doing that, they become much more conservative, much more narrow in their thinking. Maybe it's driven by some kind of a guilt complex that they left the country and now they're going to be extremely conservative in their view and support the extreme right wing and a strong person who kind of promises to deliver that. Why is that so? I do not know, but I'd like your comments on that.
Yeah, I mean, I agreed firstly with Nikat's comment that growing inequality in some ways furthers the agenda of the right and of the rise of strong men, because what happens is that with growing inequality, for example, the very rich are getting richer, and what we have is increasing impoverishment and unemployment among the youth from the lower classes. And with that, what is gained, as you will see in, let's say, the other day, in the processions that were taken out by the Saffron Brigade, what I saw was a clear vision of how the impoverishment of the youth has allowed for them to be recruited as stormtroopers for the fascist regime. Frankly, that's the only way I understand it. And the other point that Nikat made was that about caste and creed being not just the religion, but other ways in which difference is fostered to mobilize people. And I think one of the appeals of Hindutva is that once you appeal to some sort of a basic Hindu identity, you are able to overcome and solidify across caste lines and produce a block of Hindus. And that, I think, has been the useful recruitment tool for the right. So, सर आप फिर से एक बार वो जवाब पूछें तो मैं
Yes,
I was taking
I
note.
agree with that aspect.
Yeah.
With what you said and what Nikat was saying, but that
Yes, yes.
explains what is happening locally in India. I'm
You
talking
see.
about the reaction of the diasporic community, who
Yeah.
themselves have been quite successful.
Yes.
Secular society, but and they don't have the same problems economically as people back home, and yet they still support those people in their home countries.
Yeah, you're
is
telling me
amazing.
that you're telling me quite rightly that education or upward social mobility or wealth is not an effective armor against more tribal prejudices or something. Why is that happening? मुझे पता नहीं.
Why it is so? Because educated people are supposed to be understanding the.
कह तो रहे मुझे पता नहीं.
Yeah, I know, but आपको तो पता है ना. Anyway,
let's reframe it. Maybe reframing.
नहीं वो question बहुत लंबा question है. I have some answers, but anyway, let's move on. नीरज कुमार साहब.
अब आए हैं आपके बिहार के, देखिए.
अच्छा.
अब आप बात कर लीजिए इनसे.
आओ ठाकुर आओ.
हाँ है नीरज
जी.
अपना वीडियो ऑन कीजिए ताकि इनको दिखा भी तो दें आपको.
Sir, good evening, and I am from Patna. My father was from Ara.
चलिए. तो भोजपुरी बोलने की नार हुआ.
हाँ एकदम बोलीला, खूब बढ़िया भोजपुरी बोलीला.
चलिए.
घर में तो भोजपुरी
अच्छा, अब हिंदी अंग्रेजी में ही बतियाया जाए तो.
जी. तो सर, अभी जो बात हुई कि एजुकेशन की वजह से रिलीजन को लोग जो भी एजुकेटेड हैं, स्टिल दे आर नॉट एबल टू कम ओवर ऑल दीज थिंग्स. उसका कारण क्या है? इसका आंसर तो आपने कहा आपको पता नहीं है और लोग खोज रहे हैं, बट आई थिंक कबीर दास इसका जवाब दे गए हैं ना.
जी,
पोथी पढ़ी जग मुआ, पंडित भया न कोई. पोथी पढ़ी जग मुआ, पंडित भया न कोई. 2.5 अक्षर प्रेम का पढ़े सो पंडित होए। तो अगर लव को पढ़ ले लोग, तो जो जिगर मुरादाबादी ने कहा, उनके फर्ज अहले सियासत जाने, मेरा पैगाम मोहब्बत है जहां तक पहुंचे।
वाह,
तो आई थिंक अगर ये लव का जो मैसेज है सब जगह पहुंच जाए, तो ये बहुत सारी मुश्किलें जो है वो आसान हो सकती हैं। फिर भी जो आपने जो बात कही ना कि फॉरगेटफुलनेस, तो हम
जी
लोग भूल जा रहे हैं। हम लोग भूल जा रहे हैं, इस वजह से हम लोग बहुत सारे गलत काम कर रहे हैं। देखिए, जो मेरी जानकारी है, हिंदू धर्म, वैदिक धर्म या सनातन धर्म जिसको हम लोग कहते हैं, उसकी शुरुआत करने वाले मनु थे। और मनुस्मृति में धर्म की परिभाषा दी हुई है। श्लोक है 2 लाइन का, अगर आप कहें तो मैं आपको सुना दूं।
सुनाइए, बिल्कुल सुनाइए।
जी, धर्म वो कहते हैं, धर्म क्या? धृति, क्षमा, दम, स्तेयम, शुचिम, इंद्रिय निग्रह। धृति यानी समझदारी, क्षमा फॉरगिवनेस, दम इज पेशेंस संयम, स्तेयम गलत काम नहीं करना, शुचिम पवित्रता, इंद्रिय निग्रह सब्लिमेशन ऑफ योर सेंसेस, धीर, धीर मीन्स साहस, विद्या पढ़ना लिखना, सत्यम हक की बात करना, अक्रोधो दशकम धर्म लक्षणम। तो धर्म के यही 10 लक्षण उन्होंने बताए हैं। कहीं इसमें ये नहीं कहा कि तीर्थ यात्रा करने जाओ, मंदिर जाओ, जल चढ़ाओ, उपवास रखो, दिया जलाओ, कहीं पर भी ये बात उन्होंने नहीं कही। लेकिन हम लोग आज उस बात को भूल चुके हैं, चूंकि फॉरगेटफुलनेस, जैसा आपने कहा। एक दूसरा श्लोक है जो 18 पुराण है उसके बारे में कहा गया है। अष्टादश पुराणेषु, 18 पुराणों में व्यासस्य वचन द्वयम, व्यास के 2 ही वचन है। परोपकार पुण्याय, पुण्य के लिए परोपकार करो, पापाय परपीडनम, अगर दूसरे को पीड़ा पहुंचाओगे तो पाप होगा। तो इसमें कहीं भी एक्सक्लूजन नहीं है किसी का। दूसरा ये नहीं कहा कि कौन होगा, हो सकता है कोई जानवर भी हो, कोई पौधा भी हो। तो परोपकार दूसरे के लिए करना है और कभी भी दूसरे को पीड़ा या दुख नहीं पहुंचाना है। अगर ये बात हम सीख लें तो बहुत कुछ ये जो हो रहा है आज के दिन में नहीं होगा। यही बात नरसिंह मेहता ने कही, वैष्णव जंत तेने कहिए जे पीड़ पर आई जाने, पर दुखे उपकार करे, पर मन अभिमान न लाने रे।
नीरज
तो
जी,
ये बात,
नीरज जी, अगली जर्नी में जो इंडिया की वो होगी,
जी
उसमें आप के यहाँ जाएंगे, वो दानिश के यहाँ
एक
जाएंगे, आप ही के यहाँ जाएंगे?
एकदम एकदम सर, आइए, आपकी दावत है सर, मेरा
मेरी
सौभाग्य
नहीं,
होगा।
मेरी नहीं, इनकी। दोनों लोग तो पटना ही के निकले ना।
जी जी, तो मेरा सौभाग्य होगा सर कि कोई आप जैसे लोग मेरे घर आए, इससे बड़ी बात क्या हो सकती है।
ओके।
नीरज जी, आप अभी कहाँ हैं?
सर अभी तो आज तो पटना में हूँ।
अरे क्या बात है, आप पटना में? वाह वाह वाह, अच्छा अच्छा, हमको लगा कि आप भी हमारे डायस्पोरिक समूह के एक
No, no,
नहीं
no.
सर,
There are
अभी
many who joined
हाँ,
from India. So he's
अच्छा अच्छा,
from
चलिए।
Bombay. I mean, he lives, I think, partly Bombay, and then Patna, in between Bihar and Patna. So let's move on. Okay, wonderful.
Very nice, Neeraj ji.
थैंक यू
स्मिता
सर।
अग्रवाल, देखे मौजूद हैं कि नहीं? नो, रजी भाई
So that is floor is yours, Rafat.
is gone now. तो
रफत, मैं ये सवाल पूछूं कि अब ये नीरज कुमार साहब ने जो बात कही, ये अच्छी बातें तो सारे रिलीजियस में है, क्रिश्चियनिटी हो, हिंदुइज्म हो, इस्लाम हो, ये सब। और 1-2 हज़ार साल से all kind of ऋषि, मुनि, prophets, all people of religion have been teaching all these values. तो क्या वजह है कि none of it did work, or still we are where we started? So there has to be some flaw somewhere.
Yeah,
very
some
valid question. Very valid question. The same
ये
question.
आमिर भाई, मेरा ख्याल है कि मेजॉरिटी तो हर रिलीजन में बेहतर है, चाहे वो रिलीजियस हो या ना हो, बट अदरवाइज दे माइनॉरिटी,
बात ही ना हो अगर रिलीजियस हो कि ना रिलीजियस हो।
yeah, minorities are the problem creator. Minorities, I mean minorities.
A lot of places people are not very practicing, religiously practicing, but you see what happened to Nazi Germany. It's not that all those people were really church going, very Christian type people. They belong to a community. So it is more nationalism, a certain class of people who, in spite of belonging to a church or a mosque or a temple, look at in India, look anywhere else. I mean, it's not
Yeah, Razi bhai, but the problem is the
not religious.
humans have a herd mentality, and they do not analyze themselves what the leaders are saying. That happened in Hitler time. That's happening in our time. So you have to be analytical to think about that. Whatever the leaders are saying is really the case, and most of the people don't do that.
In case of diaspora, it is very contradictory.
It's not. To be educated doesn't mean that you are intelligent. These are all educated people. They are intelligent.
So, on a different note, I would ask a question to Amitava Kumar. You have not documented culinary culture much. Litti Chokha was mentioned. I remember in this My Beloved Life है. तो क्योंकि ये काफी देर भी हो गई है, and there was Neeraj Kumar साहब थे, and he invited you all to some kind of dinner. दावत थी कोई किसी तरह की, and it reminded me of Litti Chokha, and I thought that perhaps some other novels you may have documented Bihari or other kinds of Indian cuisine.
हाँ, वो राजी साहब सही बता रहे हैं. वो अगर मुझे all the people who are on this Zoom, अगर वो मुझे खाने पे बुलाएं, तो I'll be able to document it better.
I mean, you should go to Aligarh. That Aisha is there, so she will invite many people from different. Aligarh has a lot of people from Bengal to Assam to Bihar and different. That will be a good place, really.
बिल्कुल,
Get all that.
Hold on for a second. So let me say, hold on for a second, please hold on. So let me say that the session, question and answer session, is officially closed now. Those who wanted to stay, it's a chit chat session, and now it's officially closed. Those who wanted are excused. Those who wanted to leave, they can. Otherwise, you enjoy the chit chat.
अगर आप पास टाइम है,
I want to ask
सर, मुझे माफी चाहिए. मुझे तो ट्रेन स्टेशन जाना है. मेरी बहन आ रही है वाशिंगटन डीसी.
अरे आप जाइए, बिल्कुल जाइए, हो गया.
उसको मैंने बता दिया था वैसे कि
very shrewdly avoided all questions related to religion. Very smart move.
नहीं, वैसा नहीं सर. I'm an ignorant person when it comes to that.
आपकी सिस्टर वही है जो CNN में है?
नहीं, वो तो मैं फिक्शन है सर. वो उसमें
मैंने समझा रिलेट में कर रहा था
ना. वो फिक्शन है, मगर मेरी बहन जो है वो उसको मैंने बता दिया था कि ये इंडियंस के साथ मेरी बातचीत, इसलिए हो सकता है थोड़ी देरी हो सकती है. तो मेरा इंतजार जरूर करना स्टेशन पे.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure. You are a wonderful audience. I appreciate your kindness and honesty. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
खुदा हाफिज वगैरह.
रफत मियां, मैं ये कहना चाह रहा था कि 4 जुलाई को बहुत बड़ा होने वाला है कॉन्फ्रेंस रिलीजन पे.
आपके घर पे.
जी, ऑल डे कॉन्फ्रेंस होगी.
लेकिन आप तो जो लोग बुला रहे हैं, कुछ रिलीजियस लोगों को भी तो बुलाइए.
हाँ, बिल्कुल बुलाइए,
क्योंकि दोनों साइड सुनना जरूरी है. हम तो
अगर आप कहें तो रफत एक मिनी बस में कुछ लोगों को ला सकते हो.
भाई आमिर भाई को बुलाना है और आयशा अलीगढ़ के लिए है.
आमिर भाई को
जरूर, बिल्कुल
भाई को बुलाना है. और आयशा, अगर आप आ सकती हैं तो आप भी मोस्ट वेलकम.
आयशा तो अलीगढ़ में.
she is in अलीगढ़. हाँ भाई, रजाउल्लाह साहब, आप कुछ फरमा रहे थे. आप उस पर हैं.
Thanks all the same though.
Absolutely.
हाँ, नहीं, वो बस उतनी बात कहनी थी कि जो सवाल उन्होंने उठाया था कि मजहब और रिलीजन से जो डिफरेंसेस होते हैं उसका कॉज क्या है,
बताइए.
तो हाँ, तो उस पर मैंने उस वक्त जुमला कह दिया था वैसे कि असल चीज यही है कि ये सोचना कि मैं ही सिर्फ सही हूँ, मेरा मजहब ही सही है और दूसरे सब गलत हैं. दिस एटीट्यूड इज द मेन कॉज इन माय व्यू. ये कि भाई आप इंसान को देखिए और समझिए, और वो समझदार इंसान है अगर, तो वो उसको कुछ ऑलरेडी इनहेरेंट गाइडेंस होती है इंसान में. मैं आज के ज़बान में मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि चिप्स जो हैं, our creator has placed chips in our bodies, and some of these religious leaders, they activate those chips. And तो मतलब ये चीज हम ज़हन में रखें कि भाई हर शख्स जो है अपने तौर पे सोचता है, उसको सोचने दिया जाए, उसको जो सही समझता है करने दिया जाए, as long as he is not intruding into somebody else's thinking or action.
तो रज़ाउल्लाह साहब ये उससे एस्केप करके अच्छा नहीं है कि रिलीजन का ही मामला खत्म कर दे, जिससे रफत कहते हैं कि भाई रिलीजन का बात ही नहीं करो, कोई क्लैश ही नहीं होगा.
नहीं, मगर बात ये है, आप दुनिया में रह रहे हैं ना रजी भाई,
कोई जरूरी है रिलीजन प्रैक्टिस करना?
नहीं, कौन कहता है जरूरी है? बिल्कुल नहीं है, बिल्कुल नहीं है. लेकिन ये कहना कि दूसरे भी ना प्रैक्टिस करें,
ये तो नहीं कह रहे.
हाँ, और उसकी बात भी ना करें. बात ये है कि रिलीजन, आप whether someone likes or not, influences majority of humanity. तो जब तक है उसको आप नजरअंदाज नहीं कर सकते. उसको उससे हम अपने आप को गर्दन को उसमें सैंड में डाल दें, उसके बजाय we have to head on, collide and see how we can coexist. There are people like Javed Akhtar and everybody else, but fine, they have their space. तो कहने का मतलब ये, हम उसको अपने उस पे हम ये सोचे हम बात ही नहीं करेंगे.
लेकिन देखिए जावेद अख्तर तो खैर वो तो सीधे वो डिनाउंस करने वाली बात होगी. अब देखिए यूनिक किस सिचुएशन है दो आदमियों की, जिना साहब की और सर सैयद की. दोनों, सर सैयद तो खैर प्रैक्टिसिंग भी थे और उस जमाने का मामला था. जिना साहब इतने मुसलमान उनको मानते थे, आई मीन दे वर रियली टोटली डिवोटेड टू. वो कभी यानी लाखों की उसमें भी कभी नमाज नहीं पढ़ते, बैठे रहते थे अकेले, और
ये उनका पर्सनल मामला,
वही नमाज हो रही. कभी नहीं पढ़ते. लेकिन है कि उनकी रेवरेंस कम नहीं होती थी मुस्लिम की निगाह में.
सही है, क्योंकि वो जिस मिशन को लेके चले थे उसका रिलीजन से कोई ताल्लुक नहीं था. He never asked for a Muslim Pakistan or something.
It's not entirely clear. He played the religious card in the end.
नहीं, अब वो जाने दीजिए.
वो तो हाँ,
वो बात कर रहा हूँ मैं.
आप पता नहीं आपने पाकिस्तान कभी विजिट किया? मैं तो उनकी जो पार्टी,
मैं आपको एक किस्सा बता रहा हूँ. मेरे वालिद बताते थे, वो कभी मैं नहीं भूला. वालिद हमारे कानपुर पूरी जिंदगी रहे, तो वहाँ पे कानपुर में मुस्लिम बहुत ज्यादा है. तो एट द पीक टाइम मुस्लिम जो मुस्लिम लीग में थे, वो वहाँ पे बहुत बड़ा जलसा हुआ जिसमें जिना साहब आए. हमारे अब्बा भी जो है, जो कि मुस्लिम लीग में नहीं बिलोंग करते थे, बट लाइक एनीबडी ही आल्सो वेंट देयर टू सी कि इतना बड़ा जलसा जो है, लाखों की तादाद में. कहते हैं कि जहाँ भी नमाज, जहाँ मुसलमान होते हैं, कोई न कोई एक नमाज होगी, जमाती जरूर होगी. तो वक्त आ गया था असर का किसी का. कहते कि लाखों के मजमे में पूरे लोग कंपनी गार्डन में, वहां बहुत मशहूर है कंपनी गार्डन, मैं भी गया हूँ, उसमें नमाज पढ़ रहे थे. जिना
साहब ने पढ़ाई थी.
नहीं, जिना साहब बैठे, द लीडर ऑफ दैट मजमा, बाकायदा कहते हैं इट वाज अ साइट टू सी कि कुर्सी पे उसी तरह बैठे, सिगार निकाला उन्होंने और जो है जलाया, नमाज हो रही है, बैठे हुए, बैठ के वो देख रहे, ना टच समझ न वो, ही वाज जस्ट सिटिंग देयर.
Yeah, that is another.
So इसीलिए यानी that really that underscores.
कुरैशी साहब मेरे से कहा
जी, जरा सा इस पे एक बात कह दूं कि that underscores the point. जो लोग कहते हैं जिना ने पाकिस्तान मुसलमानों के लिए बनाया, that negates that theory.
नहीं, उससे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता.
जिना was never a religious man. उन्होंने कभी प्रिटेंड भी नहीं किया कि मैं
मैं कहने वाला था.
He was very honest. He was very open and honest.
अगर जो ईद की नमाजों में आप देख लें कि वो नमाज में शामिल होते थे, brought up as a खोजा फैमिली, तो लेकिन वो never belong to that. लेकिन उनका जो आपने कहा कुरैशी साहब ने, असल अट्रैक्शन जो थी कि he
हाँ,
was a barrister, he was an advocate, lawyer. So
जी,
he used that and
जी।
whatever the best to get the support for his movement. वो पाकिस्तान मूवमेंट था।
बट वो बताने का मैं वालिद ने
अब जो पाकिस्तान में आप देखें तो उनको रिलीजियस फिगर बना दिया, रहमतुल्लाह और क्या क्या करके
तो
बातों में।
आउट ऑफ रेफरेंस हो जाता है।
तो वो he was never, I mean, he was never duplicitous. उन्होंने हमेशा कभी नहीं कहा कि मैं रिलीजियस हूँ, लेकिन ही वॉज सेकुलर। अगर पाकिस्तान में वो जिंदा रहते तो
हाँ,
मैं
हाँ।
ये कि
मैं ये कह रहा था कि आपने अगर पाकिस्तान विजिट किया, मैंने वहाँ की पार्लियामेंट भी विजिट की है और उस पे मैंने देखा था जिन्ना का जो ओरिजिनल शुरू का जो स्टेटमेंट था, he very made it very clear Pakistan will be a secular state, लिखा हुआ है वहाँ।
लेकिन
तो
वो
बात
होता नहीं ना,
हाँ,
वो कंट्राडिक्शन था।
वो
देखिए,
खत्म हो गया
आप एक
ना,
कम्युनिटी के
2
नाम
साल
पे
के अंदर ही खत्म
एक
हो गया।
मुल्क ले रहे हैं तो
हाँ।
सेकुलर का क्या सेंस है?
No, वो it was not.
खैर,
Assalamualaikum,
okay, we are not
Go.
going India Pakistan, so let's come back
या
to
या
the
इट वाज जस्ट अ रेफरेंस की
या
नमाज
मोदी
में।
भाई वापस अमिताभ कुमार की बात पे आते हैं। उन्होंने ये कहा कि मुझको नहीं मालूम, मतलब ही एक्सेप्टेड कि भाई ये कौन सी फोर्स है, कौन से फोर्स है करंट गवर्नमेंट के पास जिससे कि वो सक्सेसफुल है। ही सेड देन इन द एंड ही सेड मे बी कि जो है ये ब्लॉक जो है जिससे कि कास्टिज्म से ऊपर जब वो हिंदू का कार्ड खेलते हैं, so all of the people or different castes they come together to defend the Hindutva, so that make a little bit sense.
इट इज
But
हियर राइट हियर द वाइट बेचारे जो एकदम गरीब हैं और
yeah,
वाइट मोस्टली जो अपर क्लास है, सब जो है रिपब्लिकन के कैंप में ट्रम्प के पीछे खड़े हुए हैं।
right.
कास्ट का इतना बड़ा डिफरेंस है कि जो अनएम्प्लॉयड ये रस्ट बेल्ट के वाइट्स हैं वो, और मोस्ट ऑफ देम जो वेल ऑफ वो हैं वाइट्स, वो सब एक है, इस मामले में एक है, इसलिए कि उनको वो प्रॉब्लम है
तो
कि
मैं उनसे ये पूछने वाला था कि वो तो लोगों से बात करते हैं, जो उन्होंने इंटरव्यूज लिए हैं सबसे, तो पता नहीं उन्होंने जाहिर है कि हिंदू लोगों से भी बात की होगी, जैसे हुसैन से बात की। तो मैं ये पूछने वाला था कि या आप लोगों में से किसी को एहसास हो कि गवर्नमेंट में या ये एहसास है, ठीक है जो वो कर रहे हैं वो पॉलिटिकली फीजिबल या बेनिफिशियल है, लेकिन गवर्नमेंट को ये एहसास है कि जो भी लिंचिंग हो रही है या और भी चीजें हो रही हैं या बुलडोजिंग हो रही है या एंटी माइनॉरिटी मूवमेंट चल रहा है, उनको क्या ये एहसास है कि ये गलत है या जो है, ये मैं सवाल उनसे करने वाला था, लेकिन उसका जवाब
वो जवाब जाहिर है कि आई एम श्योर कि दे आर ह्यूमंस एंड उनको भी कुछ एहसास होगा, लेकिन पॉलिटिक्स के ये साइड जो है वो हैं। जब आप स्टॉर्म ट्रूपर्स को भेजते हैं, गुंडों को चारों ओर फैलाते हैं, तो उनको मालूम है कि ये चीजें भी इधर उधर होंगी। जस्ट क्लोज योर आईज एंड बिकॉज इट डजंट डैमेज देम पॉलिटिकली, सो दे डू probably care inside, but they accept it कि ये साइड में क्या होता है, साइड रिएक्शंस हैं, वो होते रहेंगे और वो उनको फायदा भी होता है। अच्छा,
same is true here in Trump case, right?
It is true with all authoritarian regimes.
जी जी बिल्कुल 100%।
the other. जब आपने किसी को डिह्यूमनाइज कर दिया, you don't feel the pain. जो इंडिया में हो रहा है, मुसलमान यहाँ पर देखिए, अब ये ट्रम्प का ये पार्टी है और उनकी जो फिलॉसफी है, जिन लोगों की, अब ये इतने लोगों को भेज दिया in across the border in a gulag in Salvador, they don't feel the pain either. Human beings.
Amir bhai, they do not feel the pain or they avoid to feel the pain because they are human in my sense. You are right that
when you have
they dehumanize, but even the human is a human.
Yeah, but you know, see, Gaza में जो हो रहा है, Israeli, because Palestinian is dehumanized. So the पहले principle ये है कि अगर if you want to attack your enemy, you first dehumanize him. He doesn't stay as a human being in your eyes. So this is how people, our Hitler का ये हुआ, Stalin का ये हुआ, so all over the human history, this is what you want. तो वो human compassion की बात जो कर रहे हो रफत, वो does not apply.
अच्छा जनाब, हमको जरा अपनी गाड़ी पिकअप करने जाना, हम चलना चाहते हैं।
कहीं दावत
Okay, Razi bhai, thank you everyone.
गाड़ी पिकअप करना जो 1 घंटे के अंदर बंद हो जाएगी दुकान, इसलिए कह रहे हैं।
Okay, thank you. And it was
आपका यहाँ पे आना नॉर्मल हो रहा, पेट तबीयत सब सही रही? इंडिया में जाके तो हमेशा गड़बड़ हो जाता है।
yeah, there was a minor hiccups, but that's it.
You couple of times
You always pay that price.
इस सिलसिले में एक बात मैं अर्ज करूं कि हमें अब हमारी इस उम्र में, मैं भी मिड 80s में हूं, तो कुछ थोड़ा बहुत गड़बड़ चलता रहता है, सारे सब कुछ डॉक्टर वाक्टर सब।
तो ये तो जवान है, इनका नहीं होना चाहिए। आप अपने से क्यों
नहीं,
मुकाबला?
तो मैं ये बताना चाह रहा था, मैं लास्ट ईयर इंडिया गया था, तो हमारी बेटी ने मुझे एक नया नुस्खा बताया और मैंने वो ट्राई किया, तो पूरे में 5.5 हफ्ते रहा वहां और छोटी जगहों पे भी गया, बिल्कुल ठीक रहा। वो ये था, शायद आप लोगों को पता हो, इट इज कॉल्ड क्या, चारकोल पिल्स। चारकोल पिल्स, तो ये मेडिकली भी लोग कहते हैं, तो इट हैज एक्टिवेटेड चारकोल। वो आप एक रोज लेते रहे तो वो होता ये है कि उल्टी सीधी चीजें जो आप इंडिया में, तो आपको कोई इतना चॉइस है जरासीम का कि दुनिया में कहीं नहीं।
What is charcoal pills?
हाँ, इट कॉल्ड चारकोल पिल्स। तो इसमें एक्चुअली मेरे ख्याल से एक्टिवेटेड चारकोल पिल के अंदर रहता है।
ये कहाँ से खरीदते हैं आप?
हमारी बेटी ने ऑनलाइन से बुला दिया था।
चारकोल पिल्स।
हाँ,
But anyway, I take, yeah, that's a good thing. I will look at it.
yeah, please
But
do.
I use the Sporlac. Sporlac is a probiotic, good bacteria. So once a day, and I'm.
और मैं बाहर निकलता था तो वो मास्क जरूर पहनता था।
हाँ, वो सब तो रहेगा।
ना वो बैक्टीरियल इन्फेक्शन
और पानी जो है, आजकल इंडिया में भी ज्यादातर घरों में, मिडिल क्लास में, वो क्या कहलाता है,
आरओ
फिल्टर।
ओके रजी भाई, आई लेट यू गो। थैंक यू, गुड टू सी यू।
थैंक यू सो मच। आज का अच्छा रहा, बहुत अच्छा, हमें बहुत पसंद आया।
Yeah,
I mean,